everyone and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Today's session is called Save the Receptionist, How to Lighten the Switchboard Load. I'm Chloe Peirce, I'm the Proxyclick Partnership Accounts Manager, and joining me today is Jess Pritchard from Moneypenny. Hi Jess, thank you so much for being here.
Pleasure, Chloe. Thank you for the invitation.
Of course. Could you please explain a little bit about your role and about the company?
Of course. So I am head of the corporate sector at Moneypenny. Moneypenny are the largest provider in the UK of outsourced business communications, probably best known for our outsourced switchboard service, which supports over 21,000 clients in answering calls either as a full outsourced solution or as overflow to support a front of house team.
Great, thank you so much. So I wanted to get started asking you about some research you recently conducted at Moneypenny. It was about how businesses managed switchboards during last year's lockdown and the remote working situation. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely, Chloe, love to. So we surveyed facilities and operations managers of 200 London-based large businesses. And we asked them what they did with their switchboard provision whilst many of their switchboard operating teams were working remotely. The results were rather alarming, unfortunately. So half of businesses actually turned on a 24/7 voicemail. And previous surveys that we've conducted at Moneypenny, we know that actually 69% of callers will hang up if they reach a voicemail message. So from a client experience perspective, but also for suppliers trying to make a contact, or even new clients, new customers, it's not necessarily the right or best experience for them. We also discovered that about a third of businesses actually removed their main number completely from their website. So really trying to discourage communication via a telephone call, and about 30% went so far as to actually rely on their security team to answer switchboard calls and deliver that first impression. And we've heard as well directly from many of the businesses that we're speaking to over the past year or so, lots of anecdotes around how teams have been coping. One that really sticks to mind is a large financial institution whose office manager was driving around a mobile phone to allow colleagues the opportunity to take it in turn to answer calls. So yeah, there's been lots of slapdash perhaps measures to try and keep that telephone call channel going.
Right. And why do you think these companies were mismanaging their switchboards in this way?
I think a huge part of it actually is a lack of awareness and education. So many of the businesses that we've spoken to simply don't know that it's possible to outsource calls, but not only outsource calls, to do so in a way where those calls are answered by a dedicated team that get to know their business, whom they trust to deliver the first impression on their behalf, such as the services we offer at Moneypenny. Unfortunately, also there's an element of complacency. So during the first lockdown, very forgivably, businesses were asked to get staff up and running remotely overnight. So as you can imagine, there were patch solutions, but to still rely on those solutions over a year on, I think consumers, customers, clients are perhaps slightly less forgiving as this situation continues. And we know that fundamentally communication is so important. So if there is a big disruption, then there will be a negative knock-on effect.
Right. And as we're starting to approach coming back to the workplace, is there anything in particular that you're seeing in businesses' approaches?
Sure. So it's been a real mix across the board. We're definitely seeing that there will be lasting change as a result of the lockdowns. And logistically, there's a real challenge when it comes to managing a switchboard team, as historically that switchboard team might sit quite closely together. And so then obviously now there's the need to allow for social distancing and make sure that we keep those teams safe. So that definitely poses a challenge. We're also seeing that actually a lot of those roles have shifted too. Many companies who've perhaps been teetering on the edge of adopting new technology have done so very, very quickly as a result of the lockdowns. And as such, much of that tech is about driving efficiencies. So it may be that perhaps there isn't the need for as large a front of house team. That's the reality that we're in. But also we're seeing that these front of house teams actually also now have added responsibilities. They need to monitor meeting rooms as they've never done before. They need to monitor not only visitor presence but also employee presence. So there's lots more responsibilities. So to expect the same teams to also juggle answering telephone calls is going to be very, very difficult. The survey that we commissioned also told us that about 72% of businesses are expecting call volumes to increase as we return to hybrid or office working. So it's unfair really to expect those front of house staff who are already busy managing all of that workload to also manage a potential increase in calls without letting those standards slip.
Exactly. And perhaps a question you hear quite a bit, but with all the new technologies available, do you think there is still a need for reception staff?
Absolutely. Ultimately, people do business with people, and we'll always want a person on standby to help us out, even if the first port of call that's offered is technology. And that's really the principle behind Moneypenny's partnership with VPod's vGreet. So the self check-in machines are a fantastic way of efficiently getting staff visitors into a building, but Moneypenny provide that reassurance of a real person via video link if things don't go to plan, which can happen, as we all know. So we really, our ethos is that technology is a supplement to excellent service that's delivered by real people, as opposed to being the other way around. And I think eventually, of course, and we're all really looking forward to the time when we have face-to-face meetings again, can't wait for that. And just as Proxyclick's system allows for a really smooth visitor experience that's well managed, Moneypenny's outsourced switchboard solution as well is about removing that ringing phone from the front of house. So I think what we can actually expect is for that entire process to be calmer and a slicker space.
Thank you. And what do you think is the biggest challenge to the reception over the last year?
I suppose not really a challenge. I think for me, it's perhaps more of a realization of how vital and important those front of house and reception teams are. Even though that we've seen on the whole, businesses can run very, very effectively remotely, people do still need that central place of knowledge, of reassurance, of support, and we rely on our receptionists so much for that. There's so many additional unofficial responsibilities that sit with that team. So as we see that return to office space, I think it's even more pertinent for businesses to take a look at the vast workload of those teams, and also to look at where technology, where outsourcing can potentially lighten the load for them.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Jess, and thank you to Moneypenny as well.
Thank you, Chloe. It's a pleasure.